After what was probably a fun first Trials weekend for some and a torturous weekend for others, you've probably gotten a little familiar with one of the more neglected parts of the seasonal perk offerings, Solar. Strand, new and shiny, Void, strong, but doesn't really require that much investment. But what about Solar? What's going on? Is it any good? To make things easier, I've partnered with Mobalytics again in this video, who will have the full build on their website, so you can just follow along and see all the perks, the aspects, the gameplay, all in one place. The link is down in the description if you want to just go see the build. For those of you who want a bit more of a breakdown, let's talk. The seasonal perks for Solar are the following. Gain an extra Firebolt grenade, they will do more Scorch, and scorching a target will make a Firesprite, which is a thing you pick up for grenade energy, and they'll give you 2 armor charge. So, let's explore the world of Firebolt grenades in Season 20. I will say that unless these exact season perks from Season 20 come back in a future season, this is a Season 20 build only, so if you're watching in the future, you can probably just turn off the video, I guess, but again, check the season perks. While I am going to be focused on Titans in this video, the other classes can adapt the Firebolt setup pretty easily, as the entire build runs through these main perks and also mods that everybody gets access to. I had 3 rules set for myself when looking at making a build for Solar. Number 1, no Heart of Inmost Light. Number 2, no Lorelei. And number 3, no Throwing Hammer. Why? Because I don't wanna. That's it. I use Heart of Inmost Light all the time. I used Lorelei all the time. I use a Throwing Hammer all the time. If you want to use these things, you totally can. The build will work just fine with any of them, and I imagine a lot of you will probably use those things. I just wanted to use something different for the sake of using something different. That's all. If anything, I am actively hindering myself in doing so, but I just wanted to change things up. So what does that leave us with in terms of exotics? Hallowfire Heart, which is basically the cousin of Heart of Inmost Light, Path of Burning Steps, Phoenix Cradle, which is good, but I'll probably also avoid because I've used it a lot, and Kepri's Horn. And, you know, Ashen Wake, but that's fusion grenades and we're not using fusions. Then some more neutral stuff might include Stand-Asides, Peregrines, since we're using Hammer Strike, Severance Enclosure, and I guess Dunes and Synthos. I know Synthos work with like a Consecration build, maybe we'll cover that another time, but in seasonal content where there are a lot of enemies and you basically always have Synthos procced, I get the appeal. I'm going to spare you a lot of the inspiration for my choice and just tell you that I am going with Path of Burning Steps, just trying to keep things moving along here. I feel like a lot of these Solar exotics, or exotics that would work well with Solar, don't really have many interaction-based effects. They just all sort of do a thing in the background. Like last time we got a Solar Titan exotic was last year, Lorelei, which has an effect that you don't even need to proc yourself. Before that, it was Burning Steps, which just procs from killing stuff. I don't know, I feel like I'm used to more modern exotics having all this synergy and these effects and stuff. And then we go to Solar Titan and it's just like, you do more damage. So that's cool, right? And, you know, it is, but yeah, nothing really screaming Solar 3.0 at me or anything. Hopefully you get what I mean. I feel like I'm going old man yells at cloud mode right now. Anyway, aspects. I think we got to stick with Soul Invictus and Roaring Flames. Consecration is really fun, and considering what it does with the scorching and the igniting of the targets and all that, it is somewhat viable. But are you really gonna give up Roaring Flames and Sunspots? You know what I mean? Like, they're just so good. Brings us to Fragments. And let me tell you, there's a lot of options. There are very few wrong answers here based on how you like to play, your strengths, your weaknesses, and the content that you are actually playing. We're trying to focus on Scorch and Ignite as much as possible here. We want to Scorch with our grenades. Hopefully that leads to an Ignition, and that Ignition leads to more Scorch and more grenades. So I am rolling with Ember of Char, Eruption, and Blistering. Eruption is a bigger Ignition, Char spreads Scorch to targets hit by Ignition, and Blistering gives us grenade energy when we kill stuff with Ignitions. All very good synergy given what the objective is here. We also have ashes. More scorched stacks are applied to stuff. That's pretty good too. One weakness of this build is healing. Believe it or not, Solar Titan known for its healing, it is a weakness here. While your abilities are absolutely a part of the build, if you're not actually getting kills with your abilities and creating sunspots, which is where you get your healing from, you're not going to have that much healing, which is going to leave you vulnerable. This is why I imagine some people may revert back to Throwing Hammer. It is on-demand healing, sort of. You bonk something to death, you get a sunspot, easy, there's no cooldown, you just keep bonking. Without that consistency, it's a bit more difficult to stay alive, but considering Orbs of Power are going to be a key component of the build, we're going to tackle this in the mod section. Alternatively, you could also take Mercy in order to heal off of Firesprites, which we'll be making a good amount of with our grenade. Resolve works too if you're in an activity where you are actively killing with your Firebolts, which might not be all of the time. For times where you need anti-barrier, maybe you're running lost sectors or something, you're definitely going to want to rotate over to Throwing Hammer and Torches. It is just too powerful to not have at your fingertips. You can rotate out basically any mod. I've been rotating out Ashes since double Firebolts will ignite anyway, and a different technique we'll talk about will ignite, and Hammer Strike will ignite on kill. The reason I'm so focused on ignitions, besides everything I just said, is because I will have the Raid Exotic Shotgun on in most activities, assuming that I don't need some sort of very specific anti-champion setup. If you're unfamiliar, the Raid Shotgun is capable of igniting targets if you hit every pellet in a shot on that target. However, if you don't have the Raid Shotgun, that doesn't mean the build is completely dead or anything. In fact, you can still plan around ignitions. I've run the build without the Raid Shotgun, works totally fine. I am focused on ignitions because if you get an ignition, it can lead to a big chain of them, which just wipes out anything in the game for the most part. So for now, we're going Ashes, Char, Eruption, and Blistering. What's awesome about this is that we actually get 10 Discipline and Strength for free from our Fragments. It's going to make building the armor for this much more pleasant. Speaking of which, stats. High Resilience, since we don't have a ton of defensive capabilities. We can go Medium Recovery, since we'll be relying on Sunspots for our healing. Then High Discipline for our grenades, and as much Strength as you can get after we fulfill all those other requirements. The Strength is for our melee, which is another free ignition if we happen to kill the enemy that we are hitting. If you plan on running Throwing Hammer, rotate your Strength into Recovery. In terms of the Season Artifact, we're grabbing all of the Firebolt mods, obviously the Void mods, and probably the Grenade mod for armor energy reduced costs, along with the Solar mod for the reduced costs. I would also take Shatter Orbs for the extra orb generation if you're going to be in content with shielded enemies. This is probably the most underrated season perk of this season. Now, the mod game here depends on how you want to play this build. I want to go very ability heavy. If you want to go gun heavy, I've tried it, it's fine. Your standard setup of Surge mods with maybe a charged up mod in the chest is going to be fine. Surge mods do work with Burning Steps as of this video, but there's a decent chance that changes in the future. And if it does, I'd probably just use this ability focused loadout that I'm literally about to tell you. In the Helm slot, Ashes to Assets, I'm going with 2. And then a Solar Siphon mod for Orbs. Orbs are going to be a big part of the build, and Super Energy will be plentiful. In the arms, I'm going double Grenade Kickstart. I know what you're thinking. If you watch Hunter Strand, just hold for a sec. We're also rolling with Firepower for more orb generation. In the chest, we're going Charged Up for more armor charge and some resist mods. In your legs, you can probably just do a combination of Recuperation, Absolution, and or Innervation. I don't like to combine both mods that decay and mods that consume all of my armor charge. I do one or the other, but if you want to try both, I will leave that up to you. Finally, in the class item, I just went with Double Bomber and Distribution. Class item, not really too poppin', in my opinion, for this build. I really don't like taking time to use my wall just for energy, but obviously you should if you have no energy. Now, if you watched the Hunter Strand video, you learned that Utility Kickstart had some problems with our dodge and it having multiple charges. So you'd think the same would apply here with Grenade Kickstart. After all, my Strand Titan had the same issue with Melee Kickstart. Well, you're wrong, because Grenade Kickstart works perfectly fine with no issues. So, I don't know anymore. Real quick, Firesprites, They're made when you hit a target with a Firebolt grenade, thanks to the season perk. Otherwise, you need to use some kind of fragment that makes them. They give you some grenade energy when you pick one up. They have about a 5-second cooldown in terms of generating them, and you only spawn one fire sprite even if you hit multiple targets with a Firebolt. Again, they give you 2 armor charge though. If they only gave you 1, I would say that this is close to ignorable when it comes to the armor charge game. But they give 2, which means I don't think you need something like stacks on stacks to boost you up to 4 energy instantly. However, if you find yourself failing to generate fire sprites reliably and you're not picking up orbs very much, then you may want to play with stacks on stacks, because we really want 4 armor charge basically every single time we throw a grenade, and if we're not getting that, then we're not really maximizing the build. Gun-wise, I like running with the Raid Exotic Shotgun, Callus Mini Tool, and Fixed Odds. All of these weapons give me ignitions, the Raid Exotic, or Scorch through the use of Incandescent. I would highly encourage you to have at least 1 solar weapon to charge up your boots, because that's kind of the whole point, preferably with Incandescent. The new Raid Trace Rifle can get Incandescent as well. This is a fine choice too. If you don't have the Raid Shotgun, then a regular shotgun can work just fine. A Fusion Rifle, something like that, is going to be fine. So that's the build. How do we use it? How do we actually use this build? How do we apply it to the game? Let's talk about the main setup that I think you should be going for, the main gameplay loop. Let's say you got some enemies, and they're all kind of stacked up in a group. You kill one, Incandescent procs, it spreads Scorch to other targets. Then you throw a Firebolt grenade at a target that was scorched, and this will basically guarantee an ignition, even with non-enhanced Incandescent, provided you throw the grenade pretty quickly after killing a target, and pretty quickly after the next target gets hit with Scorch. This wipes out the entire group of enemies in a very satisfying manner, and should be the goal for any sort of ignition setup. We'll scoop our rewards in the form of orbs and fire sprites and sunspots, and then we'll move to the next group of enemies. This is what we're aiming for all of the time, trying to make as many sunspots and ignitions as possible. Lower health targets like Scions and Thrall will end up dying to the Firebolt on its own, especially if you have Roaring Flames stacked to the max. That's good because sunspots, but it's bad because there's no chance for ignition, so some careful planning will go a long way. Learning what will survive a Firebolt and what won't is part of the experience. However, don't forget that if you Firebolt a target and it dies, but it had enough Scorched stacks to ignite, it will still ignite. All this being said, it is actually possible to ignite a target with a single grenade using this setup. If you hit a target directly with a Firebolt grenade before it expands out, then the ensuing expansion will tag the enemy, causing an ignition, and there is almost no wait time for the ignition. It happens pretty quickly. But given how I think people are actually going to play this build, I feel like this is more of a bonus effect of the build as opposed to the way to use it. Use this to your advantage when you can, but don't go too crazy trying to go for only direct hits. In seasonal content, I can both recommend and not recommend using Hallowfire Heart instead of Path of Burning Steps. I found that I was able to go almost infinite with my abilities, very little downtime if I played well, and thus I wasn't using my gun, so Hallowfire Heart makes a lot of sense even if it is super boring. At the same time, if you're good about picking up favors to restore your energy, then you might not even need Hallowfire Heart since you'll be so stacked on energy anyway. It's your call, you can just stick with Burning Steps, it's totally fine. It's all fun and games in the seasonal activity, but if we click things up to Legendary Campaign, maybe Legend Lost Sector, although I'm 1824, so it's only a -6 for me in the Lost Sector, then we really get to see this build shine, because we're not doing the same insane overkill favor stacking in the season battleground. We really get to properly execute upon this build instead of just spamming. We're looking for those bunched enemies. Mow something down with Incandescent, throw the grenade, watch the fireworks. However, don't get too caught up in the ignition. Do not spend more time on trying to make an ignition happen if it's not going to work or if you're going to put yourself in a bad position just because you spent a lot of time trying to make one happen in the first place. Learning when to abandon ship and just swap to your guns to kill stuff is a very important tool, and it does vary from moment to moment. This clip right here is a great example. I was waiting too long for the perfect setup, and I do eventually get it to happen, but I was vulnerable for too long, and I got killed as a result. I was chasing that big explosion when I should have just cleaned up and tried for the next group. This is going to come with experience. I was originally running with Surge mods, no kickstart, and obviously it's fine to just crush everything with a machine gun, but it wasn't really getting to that fantasy of constant explosions. It was more like I just kind of threw my grenade as it came off cooldown. I wasn't getting those consistent ignitions. Once I changed it up to focus more on grenade usage and grenade kickstart, and once I started paying more attention to the whole incandescent Firebolt combo, that is when this build really started to click for me, and I started to enjoy it so much more than what I was doing beforehand. That's the build for the season. Again, other classes, you can probably adapt this build for yourself, since the build is completely in the perks and the mods and the weapons, not necessarily your exotic of choice. If you have any sort of variant builds that you would like to put out there for your fellow players, feel free to drop them in the comments. If you have a variation of this build, drop them in the comments, spread the knowledge. Thanks very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.